Have you ever heard of The Banner by Andrew Hartsook? You might not have, since I never did until someone told me about it. Hi, my name is Julie. I was born into the Christian Science Church and Religion, and after 40 years I went my own way. And in doing that, I think I found myself back to Mrs. Eddy's original teachings and original intent. It's interesting, in the Plainfield Church website, there's an article by Andrew Hartsook called Thought in Action. And he recently passed, but he wrote a newsletter called The Banner. And if you signed up for the newsletter, it was a newsletter for Christian Scientists. And it was called His Banner Over Me was Love. And he put together little tidbits from the field. He kept track of the numbers of churches closing, and he kind of had his idea that, well, let me read to you. In the Plainfield Church website, it says, Christian Science today is a science without inquiries. It has become static and moribund from seeming lack of interest. Although it answers the most fundamental questions ever asked from remotest antiquity, it receives little mention or earnest consideration today. Why has that once robust inquiry faded into silence? When Mrs. Eddy was personally present to lead the Christian Science movement, she was in a unique position as discoverer and founder to confirm or summarily dismiss the statements of students and other inquirers into the science. She was the unquestioned authority on all issues, and sincere students accepted this without contradiction. After Mrs. Eddy's passing, it would have been natural for free inquiry, free writing, and free rebuttal to flourish. All issues would be resolved by scientific proof, or lack thereof, rather than authoritative statements from the leader. While this process would take longer than Mrs. Eddy's quick, definitive, piercing, even to the dividing sunder of soul and spirit, and the joints of marrows, and the thoughts and intentions of heart, Hebrew 4:12, it would take place because Christian Science is a science, the ultimate science, and therefore it is subject to scientific proof and demonstration. And then he goes on, this, however, did not happen after Mrs. Eddy's passing. The Christian Science Board of Directors tried to fill her unique position and presumed to endorse or condemn as they saw fit the lively discourse and trends of inquiry resulting from the widespread study of Christian Science. Through reprimand and excommunication, they silenced anyone who sought to write independent of their prior approval and blessing. The greatest thinkers were either expelled from the movement or fell silent to avoid the displeasure of the directors. In time, the scientific nature of Christian Science was subdued, and the movement assumed the static posture of a doctrinal religion, but without the traditional spectacles and trappings which would maintain crowd appeal. There are many Christian Scientists today who regard science as a fragile doctrine rather than as a demonstrable science. They fear that just anyone talking or writing without the review of some authority will adulterate Christian Science and cause its destruction. They view Christian Scientists as naive children who cannot think critically, who are easily led astray, and who must be protected from the influence of unauthorized writings. Christian Scientists and Christian Science itself have suffered from this policy and attitude. The periodicals have become bland rehashes upon rehashes. There is a dismal pall over the articles resulting from this policy of sanitizing all reading material. And the article goes on. I'll put a link to it in here. But it's really, to me, on the spot, whether you agree with Andrew Hartsook and what his maybe personal views were, I would agree that with what he says in this He ends it, the responsibility for this is in the hands of every Christian Scientist. They in the world will pay dearly if they fail to return Christian Science to the realm of real thought and real action. And I would agree wholeheartedly on this. A good example is the Red Book and the Blue Book. These are books that came about by some people who, the Carpenters, Gilbert Carpenter Sr. and Jr., and somebody else, they started collecting little tidbits that were either attributed to Mary Baker Eddy or were people's recounts of Mrs. Mary Baker Eddy. You can, on the Plainfield website, under the Red Book and the Blue Book, you can actually read them in full. They're here to read, you don't have to buy them. And it said the purpose of this volume is to draw attention to some of the lesser known footprints which Mrs. Eddy left for us. Footprints which he described as fadeless. So they just started collecting all these things, and yeah, the Mother Church was not happy about it. If you go to the Mary Baker Eddy Library website and you type in like Red Book and Blue Book, there's an article which I'll link called What Are the Red Book and the Blue Book? And their article is not complimentary. They wound up acquiring the material, purchasing it in 1973 so they could hide it. They say some of the stuff isn't accurate, some of it is inauthentic, or maybe there's some translation issues, and please refer to us to authenticate anything. We'll do our best. And that kind of goes along with the mentality of, we will tell you what you should read and shouldn't read, and we will tell you what's authentic and isn't authentic. And I think to Andrew Hartsook's point, that has really put us in this, the whole church and the religion in a state of like, what do you want us to do? What do you want us to talk about? What do you want us to say? I don't want to say anything you don't want me to say. And it's just like, the thought has been stymied in this like, well, the Mother Church knows best. And whether that will change or not, I don't know. But, the number of people they have excommunicated, and it is crazy. And there's just been a lot of different things that have come along, like Eustace, John Dorley, Alice Orgain, many others who have like questioned the church, and they got excommunicated. And so among those who have been led, the Red Book and the Blue Book have circulated for a long time. You can read them on the Christian Science Plain Sale website. You can buy them, I think, the Bookmark and other places, if you Google it. And, there is some really good stuff in here. And, if you were born and raised in the religion, shouldn't you be able to decide what feels right to you and not feels right to you? Like they said, all the Journal and Sentinel articles are just they're bleached versions of Christian Science. They're like watered down. And are they really doing anything for us? Are we as a movement growing and becoming the leaders of the world in thought? I mean, quantum physics is out there, and here Christian Science explained quantum physics 100+ years ago, and so many spiritual traditions are out there saying, hey, this isn't real, this is a matrix, this is everything that it's just, the truth is coming out everywhere but in the Christian Science church, because we have stifled anything that doesn't sound like what the Mother Church wanted us to talk about or say, or wanted to control everything. Mrs. Eddy could, because she was in such a heightened, enlightened state that she knew immediately what was her discovery and what wasn't, and what was going to bring help the student come forward, and what wasn't. But again, she never told them, you can't study this or you shouldn't study that. She said maybe books that are against Christian Science wouldn't be good to read, but she didn't make the mistake that then the board decided, oh, we know better, we're as good at doing what Mrs. Eddy did, we can tell you what you should and shouldn't read. So if you're interested in if it comes to you that these might be helpful to you, then you can find them on the Christian Science Plainfield website. I just found them. I didn't know you could do that because I bought mine online. I think Healing Unlimited or somewhere like that. There's a whole chapter at the end called Chapter 6, The Science of Man. And I really love this because it is the first copies of her, it says, the first copies of her class notes that eventually became recapitulation. These are the copies in friendly circulation. So this was when she actually legitimately started teaching. The Mother Church, the Mary Baker Eddy Library, did put a version of these class notes in her Light and Life book, but they didn't put the version that will help the most, I think. I don't know, what were they afraid of? Let me tell you what they didn't put in the version. She said, the question was, what is man? And she said, man is the reflex shadow of the soul and borrows all substance, intelligence, and life from the soul, capital S, outside of man. You are not man or woman. You are the soul, and those the shadows and ideas of you. So what made it into Science and Health and what she wound up teaching to the general public was that we are God's image and likeness. But in her original teachings and what she taught to her closest students was, you are soul, and man and woman are your image and likeness. So that's a key difference between the version that we get to see in the Red Book on page 179 and in her Light and Life that in the Mary Baker Eddy Library that they published. And that key sentence is missing from that version. And that key sentence changed everything for me because it allowed me, what had been coming to me, it allowed me to verify she felt the same way too. And it was like so healing and so freeing to be able to see that, and also to be able to see Mrs. Eddy's writings, but in different words. Her words became changed over time, and we're so used to the current version of Science and Health and Prose Works that it's really, if you grew up in the church and the religion and you're just used to the same words over and over again, at some point they're just not permeating. And that's how it was for me. They weren't permeating. And I really needed it to be put a little differently. I mean, in the very beginning, she says, what is God? And all she says is principle, wisdom, love, and truth. What is this principle? Life and intelligence. What is life and intelligence? Soul. Then what is God? The soul of man in the universe. Is God man? No. They're perfectly distinct and yet united. Soul or God is not man, nor is that which we call soul in man. While they are ever united as substance and as shadow. Soul the substance, man its shadow. She used shadow instead of reflection. And that really was like, helped me. Like, oh, okay, soul is substance, man the shadow. Then what is man? And then, man is the reflex shadow of soul and borrows all substance, intelligence, and life from soul outside of man. You are not man or woman. You're the soul, and those are shadows and ideas of you. And then she goes on to say, what is matter? It is not substance if soul is substance, for soul and matter are not one. Then matter held as shadow is the idea of God, but matter held as substance is a belief and error. And that blew my mind. The man or woman that we see out there is our shadow. But if we think it's our substance, then that's a belief in error. But if we think it's our shadow, it's the idea of us, our ideas. And the world is coming to this conclusion. All kinds of spiritual traditions are coming to this conclusion. And here we are being held back in baby steps by the church because we can't have the meat because they don't think we're ready. Well, the rest of the world is ready. I mean, why can't we be ready? Why can't we partake in the awakening of man with this stuff that is so key? And I think that was Andrew Hartsuck's point in this article is, we have to have the ability to be the, and she says the time for thinkers has come. Truth, independent doctrines and time-honored systems knocks at the portal of humanity, independent of doctrines and time-honored systems. And she starts us out. The time for thinkers has come, and here we are not allowed to be thinkers. No, we're going to tell you what we think she said and didn't say and do. And if we can't prove it, we're not going to, no. And you just follow us and you'll be fine. No, the time for thinkers has come. In the preface, the gosh darn book starts out in the preface. The second paragraph, the time for thinkers has come. Truth, independent of doctrines and time-honored systems, knocks at the portal of humanity. Contentment with the past and the cold conventionality of materialism are crumbling away. Ignorance of God is no longer the stepping stone to faith. Ignorance of God is no longer the stepping stone to faith. So, how are we going to be kept in ignorance? Are we going to allow that to happen? Or are we going to say, no, I think I can turn to God. I can turn to soul and say, tell me about this that I'm reading. Tell me what you'd like me to see about it. Teach me. This is an interesting thought. I never knew that. I'm reading this and that sounds a little strange. Well, can you teach me? Can you show me? Can you ask? Can we not have a personal relationship with God in this religion? Are we just supposed to just blindly follow the leaders? No. I mean, that's not, obviously. No. The time for thinkers has come. Truth independent of doctrines and time-honored systems. These are time-honored systems that we've been given. And doctrines, not from Mrs. Eddy, but from the church and from the religion. And so, it's interesting. The next paragraph, a book introduces new thoughts, but it cannot make them speedily understood. It's the task of the sturdy pioneer to hew the tall oak and to cut the rough granite. Future ages must declare what the pioneer has accomplished. Future ages. That's interesting because that's where we are. And we're the future ages. And it's time. It's time that we allow ourselves the freedom that thinkers need to get to a point of understanding that's demonstrable and provable and makes a difference in our life and the life of mankind.